Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're talking about insects? No, we're talking about monsters. The Umber Hulk. That's right, for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, or is it 4e or 3e or hang on, it's Umber Hulk lore. That's why we're here. We're talking about Umber Hulk lore. Not necessarily the mathematics. I know some of you are right into that sort of thing, and that's fine. But no, I'm here to actually talk specifically about the lore behind this creature, what it sort of gives you, what it can do for you, what it can't do for you, things like that. That's all the intention for today. Let's give you all of the story behind this creature. Okay, the Umber Hulk. Surprisingly, there is an enormous amount of information on the Umber Hulk, and as a result, this is going to take a little while. The Umber Hulk is a powerful subterranean predator whose iron-like claws allow them to burrow through solid stone, and this means they can search out prey pretty much anywhere. Like, how do you hide from something like that? The Umber Hulk looks like something between a gorilla and a beetle or some sort of insect. It's tremendously strong. The Umber Hulk stands nearly 8 to 9 feet tall and about 5 feet wide, so it's an impressive creature. Muscles bulge beneath the Umber Hulk's thick, scaly hide, and their powerful arms and legs all have razor-sharp claws. The Umber Hulk has no neck to speak of, but the head features a powerful maw with rows of triangular teeth. There's more than one row of teeth here, people. The 8-inch Umber Hulk mandibles are capable of biting through hide and bone and potentially going right through steel. Generally, Umber Hulks are black, shaded to a lighter shade of yellowish grey on the front. The abominable horror from the depth of the earth is definitely what you would consider the Umber Hulk, because it burrows into cave complexes, dungeons, into the underdark settlements that exist down there, constantly in search of food. So those sort of fortunate enough, or is it lucky enough, to survive an Umber Hulk attack often don't remember very little, precious little in fact, as a result of the Umber Hulk's mind-scrambling gaze, provided you are able to, if you can resist it, great, and if you can't, you probably won't remember very much. The steel-hard chitin of its body can withstand rock falls that commonly take place when you are digging underground, so it can survive in its environment pretty well. So let's have a look at the biology of the Umber Hulk. And would you believe it? There is a little bit. There's a tiny bit of information on the biology of the Umber Hulk. But I have more for you, because I've done some research. Umber Hulks have 2 sets of evenly spaced eyes. One set is the compound insect-like eyes, and the other one are large, lidded, ape-like eyes on the outside, whereas the insect eyes are usually in the forehead. The compound insect eyes of the Umber Hulk, as I said, are in the forehead, and they're made up of many sort of very small black coin-sized lenses that emit a high-frequency pattern of light that actually hypnotizes other creatures. Wow. In addition, the larger outer eyes of the Umber Hulk provide the creature with infravision to a distance of about 90 feet, but it's not completely clear that that's in fact the case, but about 90 feet, allowing it to see energy waves, thermal changes, and heat sources. So it's basically got heat vision. The exoskeleton of the Umber Hulk is composed of chitin, a fibrous material derived from a mixture of glucose and a special high-protein matrix. And this is actually held together by interlocking jigsaw suture lines, okay, that allow the armor to withstand immense pressure. Do you want me to say that again? Was that complicated enough? Okay. The head of the Umber Hulk is wide, and it has the whole head, in front of the head, is full of muscles that attach to the jaw, allowing them to bite with the enlarged mandibles with extreme force. The Umber Hulk has huge muscles, with kind of in comparison to its other creatures. It's muscle mass is actually relatively high for its body size. With usually most muscles are made up of different types of fibers, and the fibers that we're looking at are your slow twitch muscles, which is for endurance, and then there's fast twitch muscles. But umber hulks actually have an extremely high level of fast twitch muscle fibers compared to other creatures, and as a result they can actually exert immense force very quickly, which is not a good thing if you are on the tail end of that. The brain of the umber hulk has only one hemisphere and 3 lobes that are arranged very well for faster processing. They have the antennae lobe, which is basically any kind of feelers or antennae that they have on their body. That's where they get a lot of their input back to their body is through that, the antennae lobe. And then the optic lobe, which has to do with their eyes. And since they have 2 sets of eyes, they have a section of the brain designated specifically to that. And then finally is the protocerebrum. And this is really around learning and memory and the slightly higher function of an animal. Their brain is more like an insect than it is a human in many respects. But there's a lot that is not known about the brain, and this is the only thing I could find. The umber hulk has sensitive, feeler-like hairs on the outside of its armor that sense any movement around it while it's in contact with the ground or underground. So it has to be in contact with the ground for those feelers to be actual sense everything. This is where they get the tremor sense from. The digestive tract of the umber hulk is exceptionally long, while harboring these symbiotic protozoans and bacteria, which digest almost anything without them contracting diseases, which is very useful. So they can eat pretty much anything they like. Rather than a nose, because it doesn't have one, the umber hulk has a series of gill-like openings in their almost non-existent neck. So it's on the sides here. And basically, this is probably going back to the fact that its origins are in fact aquatic. And there is actually another monster very much like the umber hulk that may in fact be the original creature that it came from. But then again, maybe not. Generally, the umber hulk can weigh between 800 and 1750 pounds. They can grow bigger, but that's generally their weight size. The umber hulk has a burrowing rate of about 10 feet every few seconds if they're going through solid stone, to about 60 feet every few seconds if they're going through soft earth. Owing to their really wide and heavy bodies, they can't properly maneuver in an open space, and they can often wind up or end up lumbering around and not being able to sort of focus themselves particularly well. They are better suited for tunnels and underground than they are for open spaces. Not to mention, they don't do well above ground as it is because of their light sensitivity. They have a lot of light sensors in their eyes, so that kind of messes them up a lot. Combat with a umber hulk is terrifying. And here is what you probably need to know if you are going to be dealing with an umber hulk, and that is, for all of their monstrous features and nature, the umber hulk is actually quite intelligent, or as wise as their opponents. So I would say a fairly wise creature in comparison to a lot of their opponents and other creatures and monsters you might encounter. The umber hulk usually dig to a point adjacent to the main corridor if they're underground, and then wait and peek through a crack they have made until some sort of prey or creature walks by. So then the concealed umber hulk will then spring out upon whoever's there and startle the victim and proceed to eat them or attack them. When using ambush techniques, the umber hulk's opponents are usually at a huge disadvantage, and they're likely to get surprised. It's not unusual for that to take place. Other tactics involving sort of planned cave-ins are things that an umber hulk will do. They will also create dead-end tunnels where the umber hulk will then wait for the victim to come to them and then spring out from the wall and then attack them and eat them. In melee, the umber hulk can deliver a vicious bite, but understandably their main weapon is in fact their claws. They do far more damage with that, and it's much easier for them to actually attack a creature and damage it and rip it to pieces with their claws than their teeth. Looking into the umber hulk's eyes will cause confusion unless you can resist it. There is a possibility of doing so. If you have a strong mind, you might be able to do that. Nearby beings that make contact or eye contact with the umber hulk's smaller compound eyes will have their mind scrambled, causing them to wander in random directions, lashing out at nearby allies or individuals who are right next to them, or simply stand there dazed and stunned and confused like a possum hit by the headlights of a car. Umber hulks never fight to the death unless cornered, which is rare since this creature can actually dig through stone. If you actually press this creature, if they're hard pressed, an umber hulk won't hesitate to cause a cave-in, and then once the cave-in has crushed their enemy, they will dig their way out to freedom. Advanced umber hulk strategies usually involve creating circular patterns or pathways so that people lose their way, initiating a flood, so digging their way up to a stream or a river or even a lake or even the ocean, and then releasing the water, because an umber hulk can actually breathe underwater. Would you believe it? And they can also create pit traps. So, if you want to have a pitfall trap, yes, an umber hulk can dig something like that for you. So that is the combat aspect of this creature. When we look at the habitat and society of an umber hulk, there's a lot of information. There's an enormous amount of information. So hold on tight. Umber hulks dwell in the depths of the earth. We know this. The umber hulk will raid dungeons for food, much the way an anteater would do so when they raid like an ant colony, and they eat their fill, and once they've eaten their fill, they will move on and let the colony recover. So they never eat a food source to exhaustion. That would not be something an umber hulk does. So they're actually relatively smart. They're not like some of the other creatures you would face. Usually the umber hulk is a solitary hunter. It doesn't usually hunt as a pack. Males and female umber hulk mate, and then they go their separate ways. So once they've done their business and gone through the process of making babies, poof, the male's gone. 1 to 3 young are born about a year later after the female umber hulk is pregnant, and they usually, the female will create a special nursery by hollowing out a section of ground with their claws. During the umber hulk's infancy, the mother will need to hunt for the hulklings. This is the smaller umber hulk, killing as much as possible to feed them, because they require an immensely high protein diet, but also an immense amount of food. And after they have fully grown, she will then start a new litter. So it's a constant process for the female, and there's a reason for this, but we'll explain that shortly. 2 years later, after the hulklings have developed to a large enough size, the umber hulk mother will begin taking them on her with her to go hunting, and they will learn how to hunt properly. It is during this period where the hulklings are hunting with the mother that some unfortunate victims may stumble across more than one umber hulk at a time, and that's obviously not going to result in anything good. Umber hulks actually speak a very primitive, primal, brutal, harsh language of their own creation called hulkish, of all things. Hulkish consists of various hissing sounds, grunting noises, combined with some gestures, as well as movement with their eyes and mouth and mandible movements as well. So there's a lot going on. So you've got some sound, but also a lot of body language tied in here as well. I am not sure if there's supposed to be any kind of scent given out by an umber hulk. Nobody's been able to define if that's in fact the case, because I know a lot of insects do, but maybe this creature isn't that insect based. Now, the language hulkish conveys limited ideas, and it's easy to learn for an umber hulk. It's very difficult to actually replicate what an umber hulk does. So if you weren't an umber hulk, because you don't have their physiology, you really can't communicate the meaning properly. So if you're going to try to communicate with an umber hulk, you probably need to have the physiology of an umber hulk. So you need to transform into them first. If needed, some umber hulks can also speak Terran, and others might actually understand deep speech. And this is usually because they've had contact with other creatures that speak this language and they've picked it up over time. So they can actually pick up other languages if they want to. There are rumours that umber hulks possess underground cities consisting of web-like tunnels. And apparently they steal precious metals, or are rumoured to have stolen precious metals to use as a currency in these cities. Although not all umber hulks actually value precious metals, but many do. If the umber hulk do have a society, this would kind of explain a lot, because umber hulks seem to disappear or spring up in regions at will, and always take great care in hiding their tunnels behind them, so they let the tunnels refill or collapse behind them as they go. Although the umber hulk are mostly solitary, some will in fact live in clusters or cloisters, groups of 2 to 4. Typically this will comprise the mother, the female, with their young, and that's really about it. In both behaviour and appearance, the umber hulk gender is virtually indistinguishable from to an outsider. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. A male and a female kind of pretty much look the same. Male umber hulks live to about 50 years, and the female live approximately 75 years. Female umber hulks are rarer than the male, and male will defend them, possibly at the cost of their own lives. So that's why the female is constantly having litters, because there are so few, and to continue the species, it has to keep working quite hard. Is that any surprise? Okay. Umber hulk typically destroy items they can't use, such as clothes and weapons. But some curiosities that might catch the attention of an umber hulk will be hidden within their lairs, along with food, and possibly guarded by simple earth-related traps. So they do actually keep stuff occasionally if they find it interesting to them. And it's hard to know what an umber hulk will find interesting. But there is some evidence to suggest that they do like precious metals, and they like sparkly things like gems and stones and stuff like that. An umber hulk's lair is usually a large cavern with walls covered in claw marks, possibly due to the claws being sharpened on the walls, or because the umber hulk has actually made the cavern themselves and actually torn the stone away them by hand. Umber hulks don't have a working relationship with most races, and are typically enslaved by another race rather than working alongside for mutual benefit. Neogi capture umber hulk and enslave them, and the young umber hulk that are brought up or bred are usually used as the first servants to a Neogi hatchling. So they actually breed these creatures for their own uses, and this is the sort of thing that Neogi would do. I mean, there's no better labourer or muscle than an umber hulk, and since the Neogi can control their mind, it tends to happen. In addition, the umber hulk can often be found dominated by illithids or mind flayers, to be used as dumb muscle, essentially. They enslave them for that very purpose. The other thing is they also use them as pack animals. You might also find that some human spellcasters or spellcasters have enslaved an umber hulk for their purposes as well. Now, there is an umber ravager, sometimes captured by grimlocks and maybe cave-dwelling orcs. And they get used as hunting animals. It's kind of like, I have a hunting dog. No, I have a hunting umber hulk. Some umber hulks will willingly work alongside an evil race in any kind of position that doesn't put them above ground. They do not like to be above ground, the umber hulk, and doesn't put their lives at risk. So something as a labour force underground is something they would definitely consider. This seems strange, but apparently it does happen. Truly horrid umber hulks can be found even in the employment of dragons. So dragons will employ umber hulks, and the truly horrid umber hulk is a particular type of umber hulk, which I'll explain. These are umber hulk that live a long time, and they become a truly horrid umber hulk. They're usually about 16 feet monstrosities. They're 16 feet high, and they can weigh up to 8,000 pounds. They are terrifying. The horrid umber hulk is particularly destructive amongst the hulks, but no less intelligent for their age, and they have probably more experience, and they can read the intentions of others even better. So they've definitely picked up and learned a lot of information, which kind of suggests that even though the lifespan of an umber hulk doesn't seem that exceptional, there are times when at the tail end of their life they become significantly more of a problem than they were before. The horrid umber hulk are often captured and used as guard beasts. As long as you give them an abundance of food while they're young, they generally do all right. If you don't feed them, there's going to be problems. The umber hulk are very likely to turn on their masters for any reason whatsoever. In fact, they don't even need to have a reason to turn on their master, which is concerning. But anyway, just make sure you don't have an umber hulk as a pet. Dead umber hulks are harvested by other races such as kobolds and goblins to make equipment such as shields and armor, with their hides, and weapons are created from their mandibles. Spellcasters will collect the umber hulk's eyes to brew potions and make magic items of various types. Umber hulks are despised by most underground races, not simply for their predatory nature and the fact that they hunt down a lot of stuff and kill it, but because they have indirectly been responsible for some of the worst conflicts in the Underdark. Because the umber hulk constructs so many tunnels underground and prefer to do so near ore veins, and often these ore veins are actually rare metals and stones. They have actually linked creatures that would have otherwise been isolated from each other, and inevitably results in some sort of warfare as they fight over the newly exposed material, whether that be silver, gold, platinum, or just diamonds. I mean, it could be anything. So they've actually created, not intentionally, well, we think it's not intentionally, they have created a lot of wars in the Underdark. The dwarven expression chase an umber hulk refers to the prospector's strategy of following an umber hulk's trail in the hopes of finding uncovered precious metals, because they do go so close to a vein or ore and expose things deliberately, it seems. Great for a dwarven miner, but it's also a dangerous plan and potentially can yield great rewards if you're lucky enough, and luck is definitely a big factor. Smaller umber hulks are known as the Umber Ravager. They occupy the upper layers of the earth and are the type more likely to be encountered by those who weren't actually in the Underdark, because the Underdark generally is a lot deeper. Okay, Ravagers are the most likely umber hulk to be found working in groups too, as they are generally weaker in power, and also their dazing ability is not quite as strong, so they do need to actually work together for things to actually work to their advantage. In the Abyss, there exists an offshoot species of the umber hulk known as the Abyssal Hulk, and there isn't very much known about this, because if you face one of these things, you probably will not live. The ecology of the umber hulk. Well, as it happens, the umber hulk will tend to feed on purple worms. A lot of people assume that it's only the young purple worm, but they will go after full grown as well. Ankegs and similar underground creatures. But they generally enjoy the taste of humanoids or human flesh. But humanoids are still very pleasant for them. The Underdark is a common environment to find the umber hulk because it is deep below the surface of the ground. Many deep caverns in the Underdark are actually linked together by umber hulk tunnels, not just purple worm tunnels. And they're actually, a lot of those caverns down there are actually probably created by the umber hulk, frankly. It was rumoured that the Umber Hulk digested precious metals for their dietary purposes or reasons, but this is kind of speculation. It's not completely obvious if their digestive tract is capable of breaking down metal. It certainly can break down a lot, but whether it's metal or not, it's hard to know. And there's nothing that confirms that they actually do seek out gold, silver, or platinum and other precious metals to actually use as a part of their diet. Umber Hulk teeth are not used for combat generally. Instead, they serve solely for chewing through the kill. And it's basically to chew up the flesh and then it goes down the gullet. Some Umber Hulk caves host a variety of fungi and lichen, although there's no evidence that the Umber Hulk actually eat this flora. Instead, the strange plant matter, this fungi and lichen, is probably eaten by larger insects the Umber Hulk allows inside their home, and in order to feast on the largest of these insects. So it's deliberately, they allow the environment to grow this underground flora, and then they feed on the animals that feed on it. Umber Hulks are commonly viewed by other races as unthinking brutes. This is a misconception. The Umber Hulk is perfectly happy in propagating. So there's definitely some deliberate machinations going on behind what the Umber Hulk does. Whilst not particularly intelligent, Umber Hulk are perfectly capable of rational thought and forward thinking. So they do show evidence of being relatively wise in how they operate. Umber Hulks normally have no need for complex plans or magic items or magic whatsoever or numbers or technology to accomplish their goals. And so they do not usually employ these things in their daily life as far as we can tell. If a situation warranted more than sheer force from an Umber Hulk, it is intelligent or smart enough to use their earth-shaping abilities to outthink their enemy in some way. Umber Hulks are solitary, not due to their hatred of one another, but simply because working together has no perceivable benefit. As they could handle most threats individually, they don't really need somebody else to assist them. The Umber Hulk prefer to stay underground, as there is no use in going above ground, and also they dislike light. So if you were to shine a bright light into their eyes, they probably would not like that. The history of the Umber Hulk. The Umber Hulk were once reported to be magically created mutants, whose creator had long since been lost to history. So nobody really knows how they were created, apparently. However, according to early writings, Umber Hulks were among the oldest creatures in the cosmos, having been around since the Dawn War. The Umber Hulk are believed by sages to have emerged from the raw material of the universe before the primordials had actually finished crafting everything and creating the worlds as they are. Umber Hulks are trainable creatures, as proven by their use in the Blade Kingdoms and in the city of Sombra. In 1217 DR, the Umber Hulks were stationed underneath the Palace of Manicus as one of the many anti-theft precautions. They made really good guards. In the late 14th century DR, a yellow carapace Umber Hulk was actually used as a bouncer in a shady underground tavern of Talador. Is it Taladance? I think it's Taladance in the city of Obley. Now, how do they pull this off? Kind of suspect that the Umber Hulk was probably magically dominated in some way by the tavern's wizard proprietor. I think that's probably the only way that was pulled off. How do we incorporate the Umber Hulk into our adventure? I've got some ideas. You're not going to like all these ideas. Only take the ones that you like the idea of. Leave the ones you don't. Okay? An old man Umber Hulk lives on the outskirts of a mining community and rescues the trapped dwarven or miners from the collapsing mines whenever required. It's like mining rescue. Call the old Umber Hulk. You could also have an Umber Hulk who acts as a miner and digs up rare gems and precious metals like gold, silver, platinum, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, stuff like that. You might even want to have a thieves guild or a famous bank robber or bank robbers have an Umber Hulk member that helps them actually dig into the bank vaults and steal treasures. You could have a nightclub that has hired an Umber Hulk and has used some sort of magic on them to act as a bouncer or a security guard if you wanted to. The head of the Umber Hulk could be removed and turned into a wool trophy that causes creatures that see the eyes, because the eyes might still be working, to actually forget and confuse anybody who moves into this area. So if you're worried about somebody breaking into your manor or your castle, put up some Umber Hulk trophies on the wall, and that will make it much harder for them to realize, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Gives you more time to capture them and then put them in your dungeon. What about an Umber Hulk underground civil engineer who does tunnels, digs tunnels for various creatures and humanoids within your world? An Umber Hulk could be part of a puzzle to escape a labyrinth, say a stone labyrinth, and what you need to do is release the Umber Hulk from whatever its iron cage so it can dig a hole through the stone underground maze and allow you to escape this very, very difficult labyrinth that you've encountered. The Umber Hulk could be a shock trooper too, because it really does look like a shock trooper for an alien insectoid invasion. So if you have insects invading your world, then the shock troopers may in fact be the Umber Hulk. You could have a Nyogi spider-like astral traveller enslaving the minds of Umber Hulks as servants. It's in the book already for the monster manual, it's pretty obvious. And then mind flayer colonies in the Underdark would capture and enslave Umber Hulks as pack animals. I don't really particularly like this application because I just feel like it kind of poo-poos all over the Umber Hulk, but you could do it. Alright, how do we defeat the Umber Hulk? Well, it's got eyes, it's got two sets of eyes, that's 4 eyes. In fact, its compound eyes are actually made up of many lenses. Light is a big factor. Shining a light into the eyes of an Umber Hulk will certainly cause them a lot of trouble. They don't like light. So you might in fact be able to blind it with enough light, if you can find some way of getting it underground, because they'll be underground. Avoid looking into the eyes of the Umber Hulk, and this, if by doing so and averting your gaze, your mind will not be scrambled. But if you do look into the eyes of the Umber Hulk, of course, there's a good chance you might lose control and wind up becoming confused. Stay out of the reach of the Umber Hulk's powerful mandibles, but particularly their claws. And how would you do this? You want to use ranged attacks. Whether that's a ranged attack with a long bow, short bow, a crossbow, or spells, it doesn't matter. Probably at range is the best. The Umber Hulk is simply too powerful physically in many respects, but its mind is relatively average in complexity. So this is its only weakness. If you had to look at trying to deal with its physical nature or its mental nature, go after the mind. Okay, so targeting the Umber Hulk with mind-affecting spells has probably got the greatest chance of success when you're trying to fight this thing. So this thing has been around a long time. Where did the Umber Hulk come from? Well, like many of the monsters from Dungeons and Dragons, they actually come from a toy. A Chinese toy and a bag of toys that Gary Gygax winds up picking up. Like many of the things that have been created for Dungeons and Dragons, this was one of them. It was first published in the Monster Manual for First Ed Edition in 1997. I believe it's 1997. I think it's 19. Is it? Well, no. Is it 1997? It might be 1977 actually. Now that I think about it, yeah, it's 1977. I made a mistake there. Should have known that one. Okay, it's also in the Monstrous Manual for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Ed Edition in 1993. It shows up again in the Monster Manual for 3.5 in 2003, and then followed up another Monster Manual for 4E in 2008, and then lastly we get it printed in the Monster Manual for 5E in 2014. So this thing has been around most of the time. It's a very popular monster. It's clearly one that is stuck and people tend to remember it. And I have to say, I am so pleased that the Umber Hulk exists in our world, because There isn't a monster more strange and bizarre than the Umber Hulk, and it is indicative of the sort of impact that the natural world and little toys can have on the game. Would you believe it? In any case, if you found this useful, great. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or feedback, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.